Welcome everybody to season 1, episode 2 of The Horizontal. Once again, I'm Mike Judici, and today, like before, we're going to be talking about Judici's League 11, what happened last year, and what's in stake for fantasy football this year. And with me, today's guest is Niko Choi, who's been with me in this league all of the years, the only one, and this is our 10th recorded year. Niko, welcome.
Yeah, I'm definitely very excited to be here. This is something I've wanted to do for quite a while here. Last week's episode with Josh, it was excellent. So, I'm very excited to have my shot at this.
Yeah, this is going to be an exciting year. I'm looking forward to doing these podcasts with everyone. This one should be an interesting one. You've been with me all these years,
Yeah,
so
it's definitely been a long time.
assistant commissioner, usually I go to with these
Mhm.
decisions. In general, I guess we can start with last year, and I understand that you went 11-3 on the regular season, had a tough out in the playoffs.
Right,
Want
yeah.
to recap on that?
Sure. Last year I thought was a pretty successful year for me. I mean, I finished 11-3. So I thought I had actually a pretty good, like easy time drafting. I thought actually my draft went pretty well, so I didn't really have to make. I'm usually someone who makes a lot of transactions on the free agency, but I was kind of just right around the middle of the pack last year as far as moves go, and yeah, I didn't end up picking up a lot of people, but just because my draft I feel like went pretty well. So I was pretty satisfied with my team last year, and unfortunately, we didn't make as deep of a run in the playoffs as I was hoping to. And yeah, I feel a little bit cheated that I didn't walk away with any money, being one of the only team who made the playoffs that didn't make anything. So that was a little bit disappointing. Overall, it was a good year, but I was a little bit disappointed with the way it finished.
Yeah, I would be too. I mean, you had basically three games better than the team that won it that you played in the finals. I mean, the
Right. I mean,
semifinals.
what I was expecting was that I was going to end up playing Janko. I mean, you never really know what's going to happen, but that's the matchup I really wanted and thought was going to happen. So it was definitely disappointing that that didn't work out.
Yeah, let's get a little more into this season. Last season, I should say. We can
Sure.
start with your first pick. You had third pick overall,
Mm-hmm.
and you went wide receiver with Julio Jones of Atlanta. Want to talk
Right.
about that pick?
Sure. So I mean, that was kind of a no-brainer pick for me. I just didn't expect in my head before the draft was going. I didn't really know how Brian or I didn't no one I guess besides Brian had any idea he was going to take Gronk. So that definitely threw me off a little bit. So I was very pleased because at that point I knew, okay, well I'm either going to get Antonio Brown or Julio Jones, which in my opinion were the top two guys to really pick last year. So I was really fortunate that one of those guys slipped to me at number three.
Yeah, between last year, and this year, I feel like this year is like a three-man race for the top three players. I think they're all gonna go in the same area. Last year was like two players that really stood out,
Right. I
Brown and
mean, I
Jones.
think before Jones kind of slipped to me, it was kind of a toss up on um, what I was going to do with that third pick because in my head, it was going to go Brown Jones or Jones Brown. So actually, I mean, in my head, I thought I was kind of getting ready to pick up DeAndre Hopkins just because, in my opinion, last year I thought he was, you know, the next best guy to get after those three because the previous season he had an excellent year, and I thought, I thought Osweiler was going to. I drafted Brock Osweiler way later as a backup, but I expected a little bit more out of Osweiler in Houston, so that was kind of something that really didn't work out
Yeah,
for the
I
Texans.
I picked right after you, and I definitely felt the effects of that one.
Yeah, I mean that was kind of just unfortunate draft placement there. Because I thought that was a great pick. I thought that was kind of the obvious selection. And, in fact, I thought Hopkins would be better than Beckham, but, that obviously didn't work out.
Yeah, Gronk going first certainly already set the tone. I don't know if you're gonna see reaches like that this year.
Yeah, and I think that was, I think that was the difference between last year and previous years was that I think just because we had so many new people, they didn't maybe necessarily know how to draft or know what to expect from some of the returning players. So I think, in a sense, it almost became. I think it gave like you and me and even like Igo and other people who are returning an advantage over some of the new guys, just because I think they were, really didn't know what to expect when the draft came around. So I don't think, Brian, he had said that Gronk really helped his like team in the past, so he was obviously really high on him. But I don't think he realized that Gronk was probably not going to even go in the first round if Brian didn't take him.
Yeah, you make a good point. Once again, I should remind everyone that this is 2 quarterbacks start, 2 running backs, 3 receivers, a tight end, and the flex. It's a little bit different from your most standard leagues, and it's a PPR league.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the 4 new owners last year, so we kind of we actually knew how everyone else drafted because we kind of had the same core going for 5 or 6 years.
Right. I mean, who do we have returning? It was you, me, Igo, Nate,
That's it.
and that's it.
Yeah, because it's 4 and 4. That's half the league.
Right. And was Nate? Did he draft his entire? Was he completely present on draft day?
He was until maybe towards like the later rounds. I know he was there for a good majority because I was
Okay.
texting with him.
And to my understanding, Igo missed a few of his picks on draft day as well. Correct.
Yeah, he did.
Okay.
There's the 6 people that were at the house drafting together
So I mean, I know
with
you
the
kind
full
of
draft.
had you didn't have the best luck with your draft, just kind of by chance. But I think you and I had probably the most advantage last year as far as drafting on paper at the end of the draft day. I think you and I probably had the best two on paper drafted teams, in my opinion.
Yeah, I certainly would agree with that. We usually have like similar styles in
Right.
drafting. It's
Um,
similar styles, but we draft different players. It's it's
right.
kind of interesting.
Yeah, and that's something that I try to avoid and not try to get too in my head is try to get stuck on certain players because then I'm not opening myself up to other guys who might be able to give me a better chance to win. So that's something that I should probably work on. But
Yeah, usually I get Julio, you get Dez. It's just kind
right,
of
yeah,
funny.
I mean, before last year, Des Bryant had been on my fantasy team every year. He was in the NFL professionally. So
Basically, same thing with Julio for me, but I got Dez last year, and you got Julio. Worked out for you better. Um,
but yeah, I think something that's going to be different about this upcoming year versus last year is just the draft experience in general. I think the draft is going to go completely different than it did last year, as far as just teams knowing what they're doing. And I think, kind of how I mentioned, you and I had an advantage last year. I think this year people are on a lot more of an even playing field as far as the draft goes, just because they have that year under their belt and kind of know how this league works.
yeah, it's a good point. Um, I know Janko usually does a good job drafting. He's probably the best adjusted. Obviously, went
Right.
11
In
and 3.
fact, I think he came right into last year, kind of actually with a pretty good understanding of what I think he felt out the draft pretty well, and I think he has a pretty good idea of just how to kind of build just a good team in a PPR league. So he definitely adjusted pretty well.
Yeah, I've actually been in a 2 quarterback league with him before.
Okay, so he's done this before.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that definitely helped him. He definitely set up his league, his team around that.
Uh,
Um, yeah, it's gonna be. So we have 2 new owners.
right,
But I have faith in them that they're gonna
right.
be all right.
To me, it feels like these two owners, in my opinion, are going to be able to adjust pretty well. At least, I mean, I don't really know. I've never done any fantasy leagues with Nick or Alex, but just because we've talked about it with them so much, and I feel like they've had kind of a lot of league exposure, and we even broke down our draft with Nick in the room. So I think he like already kind of has a feel of how things kind of went last year, and we've just talked so much about it that I feel like already he might kind of have his own idea, and just the fact that we're kind of breaking this stuff down and talking about it, and everyone's going to kind of get a chance to give their own opinion, and people are going to have those opinions out there that they're just going to have a little bit of a better sense compared to like Josh and Brian of last year.
And I think that's one thing we did this year better than we did last year. If you have someone that's coming in the league that's new, or you're going yourself going to the new league, and they keep the points the same, always look at the last year's draft. I think that's the best indication to figure out how to do stuff. Um, we already showed Nick, and I could always show Alex if he would like the previous draft history, but I don't think we showed the other four guys the old draft and the way things went,
That's true.
and perhaps maybe a couple picks would have been different. Um, but that's the best tip I would give is just show the previous draft, show the
Yeah.
scoring sense, and
I think there's
it'll
just
help.
a completely different feel behind last year's draft compared to this year's draft. And
Oh
I
yeah.
think there's just so much more hype coming up with this year's draft compared to. I don't remember talking this much about the upcoming league as far like last year, this time talking about the league, Judas's League 10 coming up.
Oh no way. No, not a chance. It usually, and when we talked about it, it was like the next couple weeks before. Certainly not
Right. I
this
mean, when
year.
did we do the lottery last year?
The lottery was, um, I think it was mid July, like early July, mid July,
Yeah, I was definitely in July.
and we're
And
already done.
right, we've already figured it out. We already have all our teams. I mean, last year, when did we even? When did Teach come in? Like, when did we make all our decisions on?
Those guys came in early. The three guys. Teach was a last minute pickup in like late July.
Right, because Tony was, Tony dropped out late.
Yeah, I didn't want to do the two quarterbacks.
Who were the
Um,
four people that we lost? We lost. Oh, the three Acetas and Tony, right?
yeah, that was them.
Okay, so the first three got taken out relatively, or I think you had your decision made on that as soon as
Yeah,
you know
that was.
League 9 wrapped up.
Yeah, that was. I think it was because we just didn't see him. It was just basically almost a mutual thing. I would say
Yeah.
it just wasn't working.
Right. The vibe of this league has completely changed. You know, from 2 years ago to last year to this upcoming year. I think those have been like three completely different vibes in like three totally different leagues, in my opinion.
Oh, it's not even close. And this year, I feel like will be the best year, no doubt. I mean, we're planning so much to do, to meet up and have a really good draft. I mean, we're
Yeah, I
planning
think
to.
this year definitely has the most excitement and build up surrounded by it, and this has just had the most talked about plans. Just we've been talking about going up to Maine, and we've been making these podcasts, so there's definitely a lot more buzz, a lot more excitement, and I think the fact that like we're in good communication with all the other six
Every single
members in
one.
this league besides you and I, and that's something that's different than what we've kind of had in the past.
Yeah, and if you want a really good league, I think just talking about it, like do some stuff, it's gonna make people look at the players more, focus more right before the draft. It's gonna build some excitement. The money helps, but the hype is also, I think, just as effective.
Yeah.
Um, I really see a really balanced league happening this year.
Oh yeah. I expect this to be super competitive.
Yeah, we had one year. What was it? 2 years ago, we had five teams that went 8-5.
Yeah.
I would expect something actually kind of similar
Yeah.
this year. I don't know what you're feeling.
Yeah, no. Oh, I'm expecting, I mean, I don't see in the past, I think we definitely had some people who were kind of more front runners and people who you just knew like, we're not going to
Yeah, they were like mid of
put
the
that much
line.
into it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, they would make the playoffs like once in a while, but like you knew they weren't gonna make it
Right.
every
It
year.
was just consistently seemed to be, we had different winners a lot, but it seemed to be that the same kind of people were usually good and the same kind of people weren't so good. Whereas this upcoming year, in all honesty, I have no idea how the draft's going to go, and I have no prediction really for how the standings are going to turn out or anything like that. I think everybody's going to be really on top of everything. I think pickups are going to be very competitive. The draft is going to be certainly competitive. I think that we might see more trades than we ever have in the past. And I think, it's going to be definitely some really good competition.
Yeah, the trades I definitely agree with. And me and Josh were talking about before. Josh was hoping to see more trades. I think the being closer, being able to more communication with each other, which
Right.
we have been, is actually going to create some buzz.
Yeah, I think the fact that just everybody's so into it and everyone's just going to continue talking about it And if it stays this way throughout the year as the league kind of goes on, then people are just going to be talking about it, and people are going to be, more open to trades, and that kind of conversation is going to happen more. And I think now more than previous years, we have more people who are ready to pull the trigger on a trade. I think this league and the players, or the owners that we have in this league, are a little bit more aggressive compared to some of the conservative players that we've had in the past.
Yeah, and I think the experience certainly helps that we're talking before. Four new owners last year. This year they kind of have a feel of how things are gonna go. I definitely see some early trades happening, like someone getting hurt week one. No one's gonna wait in this league.
Yeah.
I can't see it happening.
How many
Especially,
trades did we have last year?
we had a few.
You and Josh made a couple, right?
Me and Josh made a draft day trade. Then we made the Todd Gurley trade, which we talked about last podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I think Josh and Brian did a trade.
They did, yeah.
Yes.
It involved like Calvin Benjamin.
It was a smaller one.
Yeah.
But here's another thing. If we're going to have, I know we had two active, but not really two active participants last year that are definitely going to change this year. We're going to have two, like Nick and Alex are going to be way more active
That's
than
true.
the previous owners.
I could see Nick trying to make some trades.
Yeah, watch out, Nick. Might have the phone going.
Yeah, I think I've made 2 trades ever in all of these leagues.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you recall?
Yes, I do. I think the first trade I ever made involved Aaron Hernandez, actually.
Oh, boy.
That was with Will Aceta. And that was... when was the last time Aaron Hernandez played?
Christ, it's got to be 3-4 years ago.
Yeah, I want to say this trade...
It's going to be Juicy League 5 or 6.
I desperately needed a tight end. And Will had a couple good ones, so we kind of just helped each other out. I don't even remember what I gave him, but I know I got Aaron Hernandez, and it was very helpful. It might have been 2011 or something like that.
Oh, the Super Bowl year, maybe?
Yeah, something like
been.
that. And then the other trade I do remember, so this trade was with Nate, and this was our sophomore year of college.
So going back 2 years.
Yep.
Juicy's League 9.
Okay, so I think I had Andrew Luck, Tom Brady, and I had picked up Kirk Cousins off the waiver. So in my head, at that time, it was week 5 or 6. It was the year the Patriots beat the Seahawks in the Super Bowl. But, Brady kind of got off to a rough start the year. Not that I didn't have faith in him. But in my opinion, I thought Kirk Cousins was, in a sense at that time, I still think he's actually very good. I actually had him on my team last year.
Oh, I agree.
But I thought he was going to be maybe a little bit better than he's proven to be so far. But anyways, I was going to have Kirk Cousins and Andrew Luck, and I really needed receivers. I think I might have had an injury or something, but Nate had Des Bryant. So I thought I was getting a steal there, trading Brady for Bryant, and there might have been smaller players traded as well. It kind of worked out. I actually think I might have missed the playoffs that year at 7-7. That was kind of a tough year for me, but yeah, that was kind of just a little story there.
I can't remember how many trades I made. I've made a few here and there.
Yeah. I mean, just in general, there just hasn't been a lot of trades in our league. Free agency, on the other hand,
Oh my God.
Plenty of that.
No
every
waivers.
week. Yeah. Right. Exactly. So there's no waiver wire in our leagues. So first come, first serve. If you're on the ball, when was the first time you were available to pick up a free agent? It's Monday something. Oh no,
It's probably
Tuesday, right?
a couple hours. I think it's Tuesday 3 a.m. is when you can officially put them in their teams.
And
It's
in fact, oh sorry.
I think that's when the new week starts per se. Is Tuesday 3 is when the final scoring is all set. So basically, there, you can go ahead if you're up at 4 o'clock.
Right. I mean, last year people definitely got picked up really fast. We had guys like Josh and Brian who were new owners who were definitely really on top. That's what I mean by some of the new guys we have now are very aggressive. So free agency is definitely kind of like a bang bang thing. Trades are going to happen. They were new owners who made a couple trades. So I only look for that to increase going into next year.
Yeah, it makes the league interesting.
It does. Yeah, it definitely does.
Definitely created spice to it. I guess if we're gonna stay on last year, I guess we can talk about your draft style last year, and because we talked about how ours were similar, but I guess we can get into detail. We
Yeah,
talked about how you got Julio first, and now the second round is probably the highlight of the
sure.
entire draft, I would say. And we can definitely get into this. I have a couple questions.
Okay.
So you got Tom Brady, second round. We
Mm-hmm.
remind you everyone this is a two quarterback league, and second round, sixth pick in the round, Tom Brady comes off, and we know that he had a 4 game suspension. What are your
Correct.
thoughts when you made that pick?
I mean, in my head, I thought that was a pretty obvious choice for me. So I was hoping that he might, slip later into the draft, like a third round. But I knew if I passed him up there in the second round at the sixth pick with Aaron Rodgers off the board and Cam Newton off the board, that I was not going to have the chance to get Brady, which I knew just the kind of the style I wanted to go for last year was that I just really wanted a really top quarterback, and I knew that I needed Brady. So I thought, I'd bite the bullet on the first 4 weeks. I ended up going 3-1 in those first 4 weeks, but I thought, I'd get Brady, keep him on the bench, and kind of, take a couple risks on later. I actually wanted Jimmy Garoppolo later, but and I was just gonna have him for the first 4 weeks and drop him, but Brian drafted him, so. I had Kirk Cousins later on in the draft. He was my number 2 quarterback, who had to be my number 1 for the first 4 weeks. And I took a shot on Brock Osweiler and Marcus Mariota, who actually ended up having a good season, but I dropped him just due to my surplus in quarterbacks. But yeah, just going back to that round 2 Brady choice, in my opinion, I thought that was kind of just that obvious pick that I needed to make for my team. I had already kind of addressed top receiver, so I thought at that point, with Rodgers off the board, with Newton off the board, that I just really needed that top quarterback for my team.
Yeah, and I think this is the one thing I learned from last season is
Mm-hmm.
we saw Brady go second round and we saw Le'Veon Bell go fourth round.
Right.
Now, Brady was suspended 2 games more than Bell, mind
Mm-hmm.
you. And but we already knew Bell was a top running back, but we saw him go late because of the suspension.
He did slip.
This will be an ongoing thing. I feel like every time there's a superstar that's suspended. We have an 8 team league where 4 teams make the playoffs. Do you risk taking that really good player, even though you know you're going to lose them for some time?
Yeah, I
Well,
mean, I think a lot of people are definitely like scared to pick guys who are suspended for a couple games, so they lose some of their draft stock. But in my opinion, I think it's worth it. I know it's only 4 teams make the playoffs, but if you're talking just a 2 game suspension, I think you might be able to kind of just work through that anyways, and it's just worth it if you know you're going to have someone who's going to be a good player and consistent for you kind of going down the line, and by the time the playoffs hit, you're going to have one of the top guys, and it's kind of silly for other teams to kind of make them slip all the way down, at least in my opinion, all the way down to the fourth round for Le'Veon Bell.
yeah, I I should probably be more aggressive with that because I passed on both those guys.
Yeah,
Thinking, I think, because I thought winning early was very important.
hmm
And
and
not
don't
having
get
those
me wrong,
guys.
winning early is important, but the 2 game suspension doesn't sound too bad to me. 4 games, that's a little bit more something to think about. But I think as far as the quarterback position goes, and just like Tom Brady, who is just going to be consistent year in and year out, that's a different story. I guess I understand more the Le'Veon Bell, just because he does have slight history with also injury. So you're talking suspension, possible injury. In our league, running back doesn't seem to be valued as high. So I get more why he kind of fell a little bit later.
Yeah, actually, Tom Brady, like, I guess, as usual, is just another exception.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the quarterback position, I guess you could find guys as in the free agent wire. I think running backs early are a little tougher to find. So you want to make sure you have solid running backs throughout the season. But it makes sense, though, to think about it now because we never really talked about it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's not a bad pick because I was surprised that he went to even in this. I guess I should say pro Patriots draft that even he went to second round.
Right. I mean, that's the other thing is just there's, you know, I don't think anybody really necessarily extremely overpicks Patriots players, but I think they definitely do get the upper hand and kind of benefit of the doubt, and they do get picked generally earlier than they would in a draft, let's say in like California or something. So expect Patriots players to kind of go a little bit higher. I mean, Gronk went first, so I think that kind of is very telling right there. So yeah, that's definitely something to new owners to keep in mind that might happen.
Yeah. Um. I mean, we even saw actually. Me and Josh talked about last week what quarterback like is it going to be a domino effect. I thought it was going to be, and I guess looking at this draft again, I guess it kind of had it. We kind of had we have 6 quarterbacks go in 2 rounds,
Yes,
round
and
two
that
and three, and
was
that was early.
right, and that was definitely because of a domino effect. I mean, I even said it myself. I took Brady because Rodgers and Newton are off the board, and then all of a sudden people kind of get nervous, and then you see Andy Dalton in the third round, even Andrew Luck in the third round, Blake Bortles in the fourth round. These are all a lot of reaches, and I think it's just because people started to get a little bit nervous. But I don't think that's just the quarterback position either. I think I've seen in the past the tight end position is kind of thin too, and the tight end position is kind of similar to the quarterback position due to the fact that like there's a few guys who are very top and very elite, and then it kind of gets a little bit more middle of the road after that. So once that Gronk gets off the board, people kind of get a little bit nervous and start to overpick tight ends. I've seen that before. Team defense, I've seen that before.
Oh,
That
yep.
always turns into a domino effect. So I think besides, there's just obviously so many receivers and running backs to pick from that they just go throughout the draft. But positions like quarterback, tight end, team defense, those all three of those I think definitely turn into a domino effect. There's always that one bold person who takes the one first, and then everyone starts to sweat because their number one's off the board, and they're going to have to start reaching because they don't want to be the guy who gets stuck with number 4, number 5 at that certain position.
Yeah, I think people just hate the headache part of it. It kind of reminds me of like when I had Freeman and Coleman. It's like they're both good, but like I just didn't like either of them at a time
Mm-hmm.
because I was like I don't know who to start, and what people hate is just the regret.
Yeah.
That's the one thing. That's why trades didn't happen as much, and because people are
Mm-hmm.
just like, oh well, what if this guy goes off now?
Yeah.
You know, people just hate that regret, and that's what I've noticed. That's why the conservative play and the domino effect has always happened
Right.
with those positions.
No, you're right. I think there's also a lot of spite picks. I think a lot of people kind of get upset that the player they wanted has been taken off the board, and so they'll kind of just go after another player at that same position, even though that might not be the best fit for their team at the time, just because they're a little bit salty that the player that they wanted got taken off the board. And I've definitely been there before. So,
Wow, that's interesting.
and I think you've probably been there before too.
Yeah, I probably didn't even
I,
realize it.
I, I mean, I remember when we used to pick defensive players. I think like you're a big Patrick Willis fan, and I remember him getting taken off the board. And I think you went after like John Beeson or something like that, like with like your next pick, just because you were a little upset that Willis was gone. And I've been there before too. I know, just staying with defensive players. I remember, I think I wanted Gerard Mayo one year, and then got upset and took somebody else like shortly after that I just shouldn't have done. So at least that way sometimes that happens with me is that like I'll have someone lined up that I'm going to take and then all of a sudden he gets picked right before and you get upset, so then you kind of make a pick that you're not completely ready for, and sometimes you might pay for that.
You know what? Actually, what's going to be unique about this year is just what you talked about with the Patrick Willis thing and the Mayo thing.
Mm,
I think previous years, everyone knew how everyone drafted.
that's true.
And
That's a good point.
it got to a point where some people would pick people just to like mess people up.
That's true too.
It was like you competed with people when you
Well,
drafted.
and you also had to take, sometimes you had to take guys because you knew someone was going to take someone else kind of early. It's like if you know someone's really gonna like. In my opinion, I thought Nate was going to kind of go more after Patriots guys, so I'd be nervous to let some of the guys slip if there was a couple players that I wanted. So you kind of overtake them. A lot of our draft is like picking the minds of the other people in our league.
Yeah, and you I don't like to go too deep into it. I mean, that can cause you to mess up what you want to do and what your team
That's
is
true.
about.
I've definitely been there before. And I think that's why I drafted well last year, to be honest with you, because I wasn't so like stressed about, oh, okay, I think Dan and Will are going to do this, so I got to do that. I had no idea what to expect from Josh, Brian. I didn't really know what to expect from Jenko, and then Teach. I didn't really know what to expect from him either. So I was like, okay, I don't have to worry about what these guys are going to do. I'm not going to overthink about them. Don't know their draft experience. They're brand new. They don't know what they're doing. Let me focus on my own thing. And I think that's why I drafted well.
Yeah, um, didn't work out for me, but I think I had the same idea.
Right.
Um, I didn't really know what to expect either, and I usually I can a lot. I think the Will and Dan like to do the spike picks a little bit. I
Mm-hmm.
noticed. I was never. I kind of had my own players I liked.
Right.
Um, this year might be the most balanced league and like on paper wise to start that
Yeah.
we might have,
Uh-huh.
and for a while. I mean, we're gonna have the same core for a while in the league,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone's gonna be feeling each other out this year, and especially actually we're probably gonna be doing an offline draft.
All
Um,
right.
I guess we can talk about that a little bit. Um,
Sure.
your opinions on an offline draft? This will be the first time either anyone in the league has ever done it.
Yeah, I think that would be really cool, actually. Obviously, I think that only work out if we were all able to be there. I'm not sure what teachers' availability is going to be on that. But I think if we could all be in the same place at the same time for that, and if we were all in Maine, I think live draft would totally be the way to go. I think that'd be awesome. I like the concept of it. I like the idea of being able to see kind of the whole draft visually, kind of on a big board in front of you. I think that does kind of change things up just because a lot of us, including myself, are so used to kind of seeing, the clock right in front of you on the computer, and then you have your whole list of players. I guess we can still do that and have our list of players in front of us.
Yeah, I think the plan would be. I think the best advice for anyone who would do this is print out a player
Can we
rankings.
can we see can we like be on the computer kind of in the draft setting but then just do
Yeah.
things live?
There's a couple options you could do. You can have the players run your computer, look through it, or another option would be you print out all the players, which might be a little tough unless you're very prepared, and just highlight the ones that have been taken. Um,
Hmm.
just so you know, like, oh, I'm looking at this guy. Oh, wait, he's been taken 2 rounds before. You don't want to be in that position, and I kind
Yeah.
of hope. I wonder if that's gonna happen
Hmm.
in this because this will be the first time all of us been doing it.
Yeah.
We'll see how organized it is.
Right. Although, I mean, I do think we'll avoid, that scary potential of like some sort of bug in the computer or internet failure where like I mean, you can always make a trade, but like it's just a hassle when like your internet kind of flops out and you ends up with auto pick and someone that you really don't want, and things just get messy sometimes.
Yeah, this is really gonna slow the draft down. Um, we might have a timer. I don't know yet, but if it is, it's gonna be longer than usual.
Yeah, I think
And
that's fair.
and like we talked about the trades, I mean, it gives you more of an opportunity to look at your team, look what you want to do, look at the others, and if you want a player, you can trade up and do it.
That's
I
a
mean
good point.
that's up on the table.
There might be less pressure that way, just as far as like if you have a little more time, and the board's right in front of you, you might have things a little bit more organized that way.
Yeah. Especially being all in the same room together, it just creates more opportunities for
That too.
everyone, which I would really love to have.
Last year's draft was fun. We had most of the owners.
Yeah, we had 6 of them. Me and Josh were able to pull a draft day trade in like less than 2 minutes.
Hmm.
Um, just talking back and forth from across the room. This year,
I think the oh sorry,
no, what were you gonna say?
I think the most it's six is the most we ever had live, right?
No,
Because Steve was never live and your
I think we
cousin
had
was never
7.
live.
We had 7 one year, I believe. Bob showed up
Oh, he
one time.
did.
Yeah.
Okay, see, I thought Bob and Steve never showed up, but I knew the other six of us had been. But what were we about to say about this year?
Um, I think the trades might. I think it's going to become an issue, like a good issue, obviously. Um, Say you're in third round. Nah, we'll go lower. Say you're fifth round, and you have last pick, and you're like the draft right now is like fifth round, second pick, and say around you're on the fence if they're going to take a guy. You look at the other rosters, which I think you're going to have time to. Is look at the other rosters, look at what other people have, and you're looking at a
That's
particular
true.
player, you know, and you're like, hey, once it gets to like the fifth pick in this round, I wonder if I can trade up,
Yeah.
get this player, and
Hmm.
I think there's going to be a lot more of that.
That's a good point. Yeah, because it was harder to see who was on the other teams like while we were drafting.
Yeah, this will be right in front of you. You can
That's true.
look. We're gonna have a board, and you're gonna be able to see who has who.
That's a good point. That is a
Um,
really good point.
the computer does not show that. You have to click in the teams, and if your computer's running slow, you don't. Some people just don't want to take the risk and look at the other teams. They're like, okay, never know what's gonna happen. You just don't want. The worst thing is just missing your pick. You don't want to pull a Mike Tice.
True.
Um, it's gonna be some overthinking as well.
Yeah,
I
I
think.
was just about to say that. I think because I just realized that like I feel like people would like look at other people's teams and be like, oh, should I like try to block them from like getting another player? I feel like there's always a lot of overthinking, and I think this year actually upcoming as just as we were talking about, there's so much hype around it. I think there's also going to be a lot of overthinking just because there's so many people who are so into it that I'm already thinking about what I want to do, and I know this time last year I wasn't really even thinking about it, and I think all of us are already thinking about what are we going to do with our first pick and how will that shape out in our second pick? What is he going to do? What is the other guy going to do? So I think there's definitely just so much going on for this upcoming year.
Yeah. Even me and Josh were talking about last podcast. I told him I think I know the first five in order already. Um,
You say that, but I don't know.
I
I don't really know. Like I'm not really sure what Nick's going to do with the second pick. And to be honest with you, I don't really know what you're going to do. In most years, I might know what you're going to do. This year, I'm not sure what you might do. It really, I guess, it depends what Nick's going to do, but I don't really know what he's going to do, and that's going to change what I'm going to do. I don't even know if I have an idea of what I mean. I have an idea, but I'm between like 3, 4, 5 guys at my number 4 pick. So
basically number one pick is almost set in stone with Brown. That's what we've been hearing at least.
yeah,
After that,
um,
like people, I mean myself included, can predict the top five. If it doesn't happen, I mean I'm on the higher end of the top five, so basically I'll have one of like two or three options. If they're both gone,
right. I mean,
hey,
I'm
I'll just take the other
sure
one.
exactly. I'm sure you have your top 3 set in your head, and you're going to get one of those guys.
Right.
So
Literally wait once it hits like some cases it is three when you hit pick three, but this year it's like once you hit pick four, it could be it kind of
toss
depends on
up,
preference, really.
yeah,
You know?
toss up preference. I mean, last year that was in an order I would have predicted last year.
No, nope. That's literally the first pick shifted the entire draft.
Yeah, I mean,
Unbelievable.
there's a lot that happened in the first round last year. Ezekiel Elliott, I did not think was going to be in the first round.
That was a shocker. Yup.
Rob Gronkowski obviously didn't think was going to be in the first round.
E-
Todd Gurley, I guess. I think he was just rated really high last year. It's hard to kind of look back and put myself in those shoes of last year, but he's kind of seems to me a surprising first pick too. But that would have been a surprising pick for our old league and kind of just the way we used to do things. And like we've been saying, last year was a completely new year, and a lot of the new people, you know,
Oh
didn't know
yeah,
what
you
to
don't see
expect.
that.
So,
You wouldn't see the tight end go first. The tight end
oh,
go
I mean,
early, late first, definitely, because we've seen Jimmy Graham go
he
extremely
has,
high
he has.
in our previous leagues.
Yep, I've seen Jimmy Graham as like the on your way back number 9 overall pick. Gronk, I think, has even been kind of picked in that 7, 8, 9,
Yeah.
10 area
Yep.
in the past. But number 1, definitely not. I don't think that would have happened anywhere. So that's a little at you, Brian.
It's just another example of very different.
Yeah.
It's very different players. Um, but I can't wait for the offline draft. This is something I've always wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I can't wait for the mental games that are gonna be happening. The draft's gonna be slowing down, and you know what? Someone's gonna say something to someone, and you know what? It's gonna get them
That's
thinking.
true.
There's gonna be a lot of mental games played.
Yeah, we all, I think we all have different opinions and different ways to kind of go about our team, and we all talk a lot, so I think people are going to be getting in each other's heads.
Yeah. You feel rushed at all last year? It was a very quiet. It was a dead silent first four rounds.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anyone made a peep.
No, I wouldn't say I felt rushed. In fact, I've been talking about it kind of all along this podcast, but I felt very comfortable drafting last year. And I felt like a lot of the guys that I wanted kind of fell right into my lap. I mean, I think last year I had a great receiving core. I didn't. Emmanuel Sanders ended up being like my fifth receiver because Brandon Cooks is my fourth, and I know I had Julio, Mike Evans, and Julian Edelman as 1 through 3.
Yeah, actually, you picked them, and those three guys picks 1, 3, and 4. You actually didn't select the running back to the fifth round, which a lot of people would be like, "Whoa, that's
Right.
late."
Mm-hmm.
That's unbelievable. But luckily, you picked Mark Ingram.
I did take Mark Ingram, and I thought that was going to be a better pick. Mark Ingram didn't have a bad year.
Yeah, pretty good,
Um,
at least for the most part.
yeah, it was not bad. I mean, he wasn't an every week starter. However, on my team, I did have to kind of flip him in and out a little bit. He was good. He had a much better season the year before, and I was hoping he was kind of another, receiving kind of running back,
Right, right,
so he
right.
could kind of do a lot of different things. He scored a lot of touchdowns the year before. But yeah, he was a good player to have, and he was there in round 5. So I wanted DeMarco Murray. I don't know if he went before that or after that. Maybe I thought I could get Ingram and Murray, but
I think Murray went after
yeah. Oh, there he is. Yeah, round 7.
round
So
7. Yeah. You chose. Let's see. You got Cousins in the sixth. So you had 3 receivers, 2 quarterbacks, and a running back.
Cousins was probably a reach. I probably didn't need to do that.
Um, Not a bad pick though. I would say.
It wasn't a bad pick, but I think I could have waited. Like, let's say if I had gotten DeMarco Murray in the 6th round instead of getting Kirk Cousins, I would have had 2 pretty solid running backs, and Cousins would have been available, I think, later. People were not going after the QB2 too early.
No. Nope.
And that's something in the past kind of used to happen, so that's why I think I overpicked Kirk Cousins. I don't even think anybody else in the league was even that high. I bet he would have slipped to like round 9 or 10 or something.
There's a possibility he could have went at 6 with Nate just because I saw Carson Palmer went after him.
That's true, but I think I might have
But
put the
like,
pressure on that pick.
yeah, it's just exactly what we talked about.
Right.
Could have been another small domino effect.
Because then you don't see anyone going until Eli Manning in round 8.
And then after that, Tyra Taylor 9. Yeah, it's like a
Right, but
quarterback.
Philip Rivers was still available in round 10. I don't think there's that much of a difference between Kirk Cousins and Philip Rivers. If I didn't even take Kirk Cousins and I took Philip Rivers at round 10 last year, I would have been fine. I probably would have had a similar record to what I had last year, and I could have had another better running back.
Yeah, quarterbacks set the league. They kind of set your draft, how you're gonna go. I think. We clearly started that early. Um, but everyone should know that Niko is known for taking his running backs late at good value. It's worked.
Yeah, I've
Your
I
Ronnie
mean,
Brown classics
right,
in the
yeah,
late rounds
right.
back in the day.
Ronnie Brown and Ricky Williams. I used to do that combo. I've definitely gotten lucky, or I just know what I'm doing. But I've gotten some good late round running backs. And I've been very fortunate that they've worked out. So, like I said, last year I felt like a lot of things kind of somehow were falling into my lap, and it was surprising me that I was able to like draft all the guys that just said. I mean, a lot of those guys are going to be like it just wouldn't be possible to put on the same team again this year. Mike Evans, Julio Jones, Tom Brady. I don't think those 3 guys will end up on the same team this next coming year.
No, I even talked to Josh before, and I told him Mike Evans could go first round.
He could. I think they have him projected in the top 12, top
Yeah,
10.
yeah.
So I think I got him last year in like 3rd or 4th round. Yeah, 3rd round. So,
You know what's interesting? Round 14, Jameis Winston, Matt Ryan, Marcus Mariota all go back to back to
yep.
back.
Wow,
Same
round
thing we're
14.
talking about.
Yep, and those were,
All successful
yep, those
quarterbacks.
guys all had great years. So, that's what I'm saying. I think QB2 definitely got a little bit overpicked last year for some people, and then some people waited and got good value out of late round picks.
Mm, yep.
So I see Matt Stafford in round 13.
Wow. The way
So
quarterbacks were a hit,
yeah,
absolute hit. Really, it was really good waiting on the quarterbacks.
right. The quarterback selections were definitely interesting last year. I mean, to see Tyrod Taylor go before Phillip Rivers and who did we just mention?
Matt Ryan,
Yeah,
Winston.
Matt Ryan, Jameis Winston, Matt Stafford. So
He,
yeah, things were definitely surprising. And what was it? The Carson Palmer went,
yeah,
or no, it was Andy Dalton went in the third round
yeah.
really early. So that was weird and surprising. It's
I
just
think people just had a completely different like ranking on their quarterbacks. It
for
looked like
sure, for
I
sure.
that's what it came down to. Now that we look at it again, I don't even know if his domino effect was certainly that quarterbacks would be taken, but I think certainly people just had different
Yeah,
rankings,
people had very different value
which is
on.
almost a little surprising. I would say
It,
that
it
different.
is surprising, and it might just feel surprising because in your head, okay, these are quarterbacks 1 through 10. But I think that, frankly, last year was very different for each individual. I
Mm,
mean, Cam Newton I mean, I know Tom Brady had the 4 game suspension, but Cam Newton was still picked in the second round. I know he just came off like an excellent season the year before. Still kind of surprising.
yeah, yep. Definitely one of the more unique drafts we had last year. I think we touched on most of everything. Actually, I actually do have one more thing about last season before I want to get into this season. Uh, any notable free agent pickups you made that you keep an eye on last year that set your team, if you can
Any free
recall?
agents that I made personally? Yeah. So I was very fortunate to pick up Jimmy Graham. I did have a hole at tight end as good as and strong as my receiving core was. My running back core, at least early on, was all right. Quarterbacks were obviously pretty good. Tight end was kind of a hole for me. I chose Gary Barnage, and I think that was probably towards the end. Like I said, I missed out on some of the top tight ends, so I ended up, unfortunately, I did want to get either kind of like a Travis Kelce or a Greg Olson, but that didn't end up working out for me. So I ended up getting Barnage a lot later. He wasn't really working out for me, and somehow I think it was Janko. Graham must have gotten off to a slow start, dropped him. I obviously jumped right on that because of Jimmy Graham. I know he hadn't been doing great since he got to Seattle, but I was like, I'm kind of desperate for a tight end. I know what he can do. I only look for him to improve. So that was definitely something big for me because after that, I think my team was very complete.
Yeah. Um, Jimmy Graham was definitely an interesting pickup. I always went back and forth with him, but I never jumped the gun on him. Um, do you ever feel like during the season, like that the free agent wire just gets so thin that like it
Yeah,
just becomes almost unattractive to even look
it
at a point?
does. It does. Sometimes you're looking for a receiver, you have some like build up buys, and it's just impossible sometimes. For the first several weeks, there's plenty of guys to pick up from. But then I feel like it gets to a certain point in the season where it's a little bit later on, where anyone who's on the free agents is someone who's hurt or just hasn't been good all year, so you can't trust them anyways. So,
Yeah, I was having trouble, especially I think like the flex position I was having a little trouble with. I think late in the season I just could not hit on one. Like I had Jameson Crowder, got rid of him. They started getting good, and you know you're just struggling after that point.
you have to be quick too, like we said in our league. And I think later on in the year, sometimes guys get dropped because your team just kind of ends up building up too many players, and then you have issues with buys later in the year, and you're kind of forced to drop someone who's kind of good, and then you might need a kicker because your kicker has a buy, so then you have to make a complete ad drop. So then someone good might end up on the free agents. And last year, I know I got Jordan Howard from Brian dropped. I think he bounced around to a couple teams, but that was a running back that ended up helping me
Mm.
as well. So, and that was kind of a later season pickup for me. So sometimes you get lucky.
Thoughts on drafting? Do you look at the buys when you draft, or you just pick your best player that you want?
I do look at the buys. Last year, Brady and Cousins both had like a week 9 bye. So I take it into account, but if there's a player that I want and there's someone who I think is going to bring a lot of value to my team, I'll disregard it. Obviously, I like unfortunately like can't put a team with guys with all the same buy, but I don't think that would stop me too much if there was a guy I really wanted. I don't think that'd play too much of a factor for me.
Completely agree. I look at it, but nothing too much
Hmm.
gets into account. Also, I'm like, if it's one player or the other, like I'm on 50-50 on a player, I'll then look into the buy.
Hmm.
But other than that, I don't.
Right. I
It just
feel
doesn't
like
consider it.
personally, I don't like to get too caught up on that because you have plenty of weeks where they are playing. It's only one week of a bye, so.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see if that comes into account into like the 8th through like 12 rounds when we pick this year.
Hmm.
I'm looking forward to that. Um, so what makes the playoffs this year? And what I mean by that, what is the 4 seed record going to be?
Oh, that is a good question. I think a 6 and 8 could even kind of get in.
Same as last year? Because the 6 and
Yeah.
8 made it last year.
Yep. I think we're gonna see. Last year, Janko and I were both 11-3. I don't know if you're gonna see that this year. We've had years in the past where like everyone was 8-6, or a lot of people were 7-7. We definitely had. This isn't like this is going to be the first year where like, there's complete balance. There is definitely leagues in the past at some point where we did have a lot of balance in our league.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Things kind of changed a little bit over time, but in the past, we definitely had 6 or 7 very, very strong, sometimes even 8 strong people in the league. So we had a lot of at 500 teams. I pretty sure I won my championship in a year that I was only 8-6, 7-7.
I was 7-7 in my championship, yep.
Right. Maybe I was 9-5, but I really don't think I was a double digit win team. So yeah, I look for more teams kind of around 500. I don't know if there's going to be a team unless someone kind of just has a really unfortunate draft. I don't know if we'll have a team that's 3-11 or
Yeah, it's very unlikely at this point.
yeah. I see a lot more of us. I see a lot more balance this year.
Yeah. And actually, when you talk about the digits, for 8 years before this, um, we were only 2 games apart wins wise.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of separated to 7 this year, but you were 5 wins
Yeah, I did.
over
Yep.
me. But wow, 2 wins is nothing. We both had
Yeah.
one championship. We
Hmm.
had a lot of top 3 finishes.
I
You and
think we've
I.
definitely been two of the strongest teams. Obviously, we've been in the only two have been in the league since its inception to now. But we've both definitely had really good success over the years.
Yeah, very consistent. Either you or me is like in the top 3. I would say.
Yeah, I'd like to
Um,
think I'm
we never
usually one
played
of
in
the
the
better
finals
players.
though.
That's true. I can't even really remember playing in the playoffs. I think it might have happened.
It
I
happened
just
early
don't
on.
recall.
Happened early on, but nothing recent.
That's true. A you and me finals would be very interesting.
Never happened before,
Yeah, that's a
and
good point.
maybe it only happened once in the playoffs, which a little surprising. I would say it kind of just speaks to like usually how close we are, because usually unless you're 2 and 3, the seeds don't really play.
That's true.
It's
And I
like
feel like in your very best years and in my very best years, the other one of us isn't necessarily quite right behind. Sometimes one of us ends up kind of being the more of the 3 or 4. We've never really been the 1 and 2. And
yeah,
that could be because we have similar styles and we have certain players that we each like to get, and either Mike's going to kind of get lucky that the guys he likes and wants ends up being good that year, or it's kind of my year where my guys end up being good. So,
last year was definitely that case where you won that
yep,
one.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I thought your team looked pretty strong, on draft day and on paper. But things really, it was, I know you ran into a lot of injuries. The Hopkins situation was kind of unfortunate
Hopkins
in
and Dez.
Houston.
Yep.
Dez ran into a lot of injuries.
That's
So
what
I
killed me. The
know that
receiver.
was
What I thought
kind
was
of
going to be
tough.
my strongest position, actually was my weakest receivers.
Right.
Doug Baldwin was actually my best receiver. He was my fourth choice.
When
He
did
was
you,
he was supposed to be my slot guy,
right.
flex guy, I
When
should
did you
say.
draft him?
Um,
Was it kind of later?
I wouldn't say too late. Maybe seventh or eighth area. We actually have the draft up. We can scroll down.
Well, it wasn't in the first. Oh, okay. It was in
It was
round
seven.
7.
Seven, yeah.
And you took Drew Brees in round 5, and you said Matt Ryan in round 13. And Brees and Ryan ended up being
It,
probably the best 1-2 quarterback punch in the league last year.
it was, and they were 2 and 3 in scoring. The problem, what cost me maybe in the playoffs is that I started Bortles for maybe the first three
That's true, right? You took
weeks.
Bortles in the 4th round. You took
Yeah,
Bortles before you
that
took
probably that was probably the
Brees and
pick that
Ryan.
cost me the playoffs.
That's true, because instead, you're talking you probably get a top running back, a top receiver in that spot. And that would have completely, I think, changed the face of your team.
Yeah, Bortles definitely killed my
That
team.
was unfortunately a setback. Obviously, I mean, the Hopkins number 1 pick, it was Dez in the 2nd round. You
Just a bad
pick
early.
picks 1, 2, and 4.
I had a great late draft,
They were kind of tough.
but early where it counts the most.
Right. And then Freeman was your 3rd pick. He was good, but I don't think Freeman
Not
could,
to the very
really
end.
carry your team. Exactly.
Not to the very
So
end.
it's your first 4 players really just didn't perform as they should have. And I don't think that was your fault at all for taking those guys, because I think if I had been in the number 4 spot that last year, I could have taken, I've had Bryant plenty of times in the past. I was planning on taking Hopkins. So I could have been the guy who just had the bad luck last year.
Yeah.
Those were, I thought, good picks, and I think even this year, those guys are still good picks.
Yeah.
I look for Hopkins to do a
Just
little
very
bit better this
surprising.
year. I look for Bryant to be better this year as well, assuming he stays healthy, assuming Hopkins stays healthy.
Right, right,
I
right.
look for them to bounce back a little bit. So,
Yeah. Um, and it's funny because I was talking about player hate bias last podcast episode. Do you ever have that where you had a player from a previous season that just screwed you over and you're just like, you see him up at the bar, you're like, oh, I remember what you did to me.
yeah, I don't know if I can think of any examples of players who have been on my own personal team and they kind of screwed me and I just left a terrible taste in my mouth and just didn't want them. There's been guys who, such as Keenan Allen, we've all kind of had this problem. You've had the problem.
We
Josh
talk
had the
about last,
problem.
yep.
But I also have had Keenan Allen in the past where he gets hurt and it really lets you down. And then you kind of just avoid him because he's injury prone. There's there are other players in the league that I just don't tend towards getting, even if they are kind of good for some teams. There's just some guys who just aren't as good of fits, I feel like, for the teams I want. So, yeah, there's definitely some personal bias that sometimes does get in the way, but it's never affected my team, I think, to the point where my team suffered from it
Right.
necessarily.
That's
But
good.
it's definitely something I think about.
Yeah. Any bold predictions for this year?
Bold predictions. I
Little on
actually
the
think
spot.
I think Josh is going to be a lot better. Actually,
You think he's a playoff team?
I don't know about a playoff team. I think he's going to be a lot better. I don't know who's going to be a playoff team. Well, Josh 3-11 last year.
Just remember
I think
that he has 6 of the first 33 picks.
I know, and that's why I think he's going to be better. Josh was 3-11 last year. I think I look for him to improve by at least 4 wins. I expect a 500 at least year from Josh next year, which is really big because you know what? That might be good enough to make the playoffs. 7
Like we said,
7.
yeah.
But I think there's plenty of good competition as well. I'd like to think I'd make the playoffs. I'd like to, think Mike's going to be good and make a shot at the playoffs. I expect Janko to be good.
It's going to be
Teach
very...
was in our finals last year. I thought he had an excellent team, and he actually had a very different team
Oh, it's
than
completely different.
than Mike. So he kind of had a unique team that actually really worked. And if he drafts similar to that again, I think that's going to work out for him. I think Josh, from what I can understand, has good plans, and he's going to be lined up with that first pick. And he does have Antonio Brown. That is definitely a team changer. So that's 5 teams right there that I think are going to be good. But I also look for Brian to get better too. I think Brian went through a lot of growing pains last year. Not to keep taking shots or anything at Brian, but he Brian was what, 2 games under 500?
Yeah, 6-8 like me.
Okay, so Brian's didn't even have that bad of a record last year, and he made a lot of. He picked, like we said many times, Gronk with the first pick, Dalton with his third pick. Those were like kind of shocking picks, and his team still managed to be only 2 games under 500. So I think Brian's definitely learned a lot from last year. I think he knows how this league works. He's going to be very into it as he was last year, and that's why Brian was good, because Brian was very into it, and Brian made
Moves.
a lot of moves. Did he make more moves than anybody else, I
Yeah, he
think, last
doubled.
year?
He
Yeah, he
doubled.
doubled. So that's really what I think made Brian a good team last year. And I only expect his draft to be better this year. So I look for him to be better this year and just definitely have a better draft and a better grasp on how this league works. And then our other two are Nick and Alex. And I expect them to be pretty good. I know they're new, but like I've said, they're all very into it. I know that they're very serious about it. They're experienced fantasy football players. I think they'll adapt to this league pretty well. So I I don't really see anyone as our like weakest link.
Yeah, only injuries will cause that.
Right.
But we'll see.
Yep. It's going
Um,
to be kind of just the look of game day,
yep.
draft day.
Gonna be looking forward to this season. So now, we usually take the last few minutes. We do in every episode. We're gonna be talk about what's going on in the sports world.
Sure.
Um, I know me and you are always big on baseball stats,
For sure.
and I think there's a lot to talk about this year.
Definitely. Yeah. I think I've
Any
been
opening
pretty.
thoughts?
Yeah, I've been pretty into. I'm a huge baseball fan. I think it's one of my favorite sports to follow. The statistics, and the history, I really love getting into it. This year, I've definitely been paying a lot of attention. There's a lot of interesting kind of storylines this year as far as players kind of just being surprising, and a lot of teams being surprising this year. So that's definitely standing out to me. The Red Sox are playing overall pretty well, so that's exciting, and that's what always kind of keeps me interested in baseball and the team as well. And after they made the playoffs last year, I'm definitely interested. Love Chris Sale, so I'm always interested. I'm always looking at the Red Sox box score every night, and I like to take a look around the league as well. So
Yeah. We noticed a lot of surprising power going on this year.
yes, for sure.
Um, Aaron Judge is at 27 home runs. I think
Mhm.
that's just stupid.
Yeah, that's
Um,
incredible. This is one of the best rookie seasons I personally have ever seen.
yeah. Um, it's unreal. I
Right. Right now, he's the best offensive player in the American League.
yeah,
And if the regular season was over today, I think he'd be a clear MVP in the American League.
borderline unanimous, I would say.
Yeah.
Um,
So, you know,
look at even George Springer, 24 home runs. Like,
yeah, there's a
it's
lot
like
of
where did
good
these guys come
there's a
from?
lot of good young talent this year. That's definitely stand out. On the flip side, there's a lot of veterans who have been around, haven't necessarily put up big numbers in their career, and they're putting up pretty big numbers this year. So I'm looking at guys like Justin Smoke,
Logan Morrison's
yeah,
another
Logan
one.
Morrison.
Even
So
Votto's having a
right, Joey Votto's kind
power
of
hitter.
right, and I was kind of surprised by that. Nick Markakis is batting 295 or something this
Yeah,
year.
it's still kicking. Wow. Mark Reynolds, 300.
Right, right. So there's some guys who have been around that I'm even surprised are kind of still starting on some teams, and they're having. I thought they were kind of flukes by the end of April, May. Ryan Zimmerman, I thought,
Oh my God.
kind of jumped out to a hot start. I was like, okay, Ryan Zimmerman is going to sizzle out. He's been amazing so far this year. So
Pitcher you want to have for this season, this postseason, Max Scherzer or Clayton Kershaw?
I love Clayton Kershaw, and I think he's the best pitcher in baseball. However, I think in a playoff game, just because I think I'm going to go with Scherzer actually.
I agree. Scherzer's my favorite pitcher.
Yeah, I think Scherzer's really, really solid. Kershaw has had some struggles in the past in the playoffs. I know last year he pitched a little bit better and he kind of came in that relief game for the Dodgers and he pitched well. But I think Scherzer's proven to have a little bit of a better playoff history. So I
Yep,
think
definitely.
I would take Scherzer, but Kershaw I'll still take the regular season. However, this year, Scherzer is I think number one as far as pitchers go.
Oh, Chris Sale's a close two for me.
Yeah, I
Um,
love Chris
Look at the
Sale.
dominance. I mean, I know Sale has four more strikeouts than
Yeah,
Scherzer, but I still think Scherzer, like, the guy's bringing a no hitter to the sixth
right.
so many times.
Right.
It's a statistical anomaly what he's doing.
Yeah,
His dominance. He's given up 65 hits and
yeah.
113 innings pitched.
Scherzer's averaging like five, giving up 5 hits a game. I think the record for that is Nolan Ryan with like 5.24 or something like
Yeah, and he
that
plunked guys all the time too.
hits per game. So it's definitely extremely impressive year. And Sale was up more on strikeouts earlier in the year. Scherzer's been striking out a lot more guys as of late.
Hmm.
So,
I'll give you two or three teams, and I want to tell you if they're contenders or pretenders.
okay.
Cubs.
Right now, I'm going to say that they're pretenders. I'm not loving the way their pitching staff is looking so far. Jake Arrieta, I think, he's kind of really struggling, and I don't know if he's going to be able to bounce back. I think their team, their pitching is aging a little bit, so that was definitely their strongest suit before, and I think there's definitely some pieces on offense that are kind of struggling to put it a little bit more together this year. Anthony Rizzo's kind of getting off to a little bit of a slow start this year, so
Yep.
I don't know. I think they have a lot of improvement to do better. With that being said, I do think that they're in a relatively weak division. I'm not sure how much I believe in the Brewers who are holding their first place spot right now. And, the Reds, Pirates, even the Cardinals, who are normally pretty good, are definitely not a contending team this year. So I still wouldn't be surprised if the Cubs end up making the playoffs. However, I don't see them kind of being the World Series team that they were last year.
Number two, the Diamondbacks.
I like the Diamondbacks this year, actually. They were one of the surprising teams that stood out to me. I think they have a lot of young talent that's very good. I like their pitching staff. Zach Greinke, Robbie Ray. I think
Shocked
those
by their
guys
success.
are going to continue to play well for the rest of the year. I've been very impressed with them so far. Paul Goldschmidt could be the National League MVP this year. I think he's an excellent player. And they have a lot of other young guys too. Jake Lamb is kind of breaking out like I expected him to
That
this
Peralta
year for
guy, David
Arizona.
Peralta.
Yep,
Yep.
Peralta. AJ Pollock's also another good young player that they have.
One
So,
healthy. Yep.
yeah, I think they
And
have a lot of young guys who I think are going to continue to stay good and stay hot. And I think the Diamondbacks are a for real team. However, on the flip, contrary to the Cubs, they play in an extremely competitive division.
yeah, with the Dodgers and Rockies, very good.
Rockies are playing superb this year. I'm not sure how long that will last, but as of now, they're looking very good. Their offense, as usual, is pretty good, but the pitching has kind of found it this year. And the Dodgers, they're looking great both offensively and on the pitching side of things as well. So that's going to be a very hard division to compete in. And I'm not sure if the Diamondbacks are going to overthrow by come season end the Dodgers for the NL East or NL West division title. So the Diamondbacks might have to fight for a wild card spot. But I do look for them to be successful throughout the rest of the year.
I'll give you one more team, the Yankees.
I actually like the Yankees too this year. As we talked about before, Aaron Judge is the best player in the American League right now offensively. And I like what their pitching staff has done this year as well. I think their bullpen is way above average. And I think they put together, they made some good moves this year. I thought Matt Holliday was a good pickup for them and kind of
Yep.
a good fit. And he's been playing well for them. Starlin Castro is having a great year. So, and obviously, it's a competitive division. I think the Red Sox are also going to end up having a good year. I think that they're playing well now, but I think they're only hopefully just going to get better from here. There's still some injuries that need to be worked out. I think their pitching staff needs to find it and put it together a little bit more. But I do look for the Yankees to either come away with the division or walk away with a wild card spot in the American League.
Definitely competitive in baseball today. It's gonna be like our league, I think.
For
Um,
sure.
Baseball is gonna be exciting. Our
Yeah.
league's gonna be exciting.
Yeah.
Nico, I thank you for coming on.
All right.
It's
Yeah,
been
of
a
course. Yeah, this has been great.
great show. We always wanted to been doing it for a long time.
Sure. Yeah.
Um,
Would love to get back in here again.
yeah, we're gonna be doing some during the season, so you'll be on for sure. You can follow this podcast on _ the horizontal on Twitter. This is the second episode. Next episode, I believe, is going to be with Brian Smith.
Cool.
Get ready if you're listening. This has been the horizontal. I'm Mike Judici. Thank you for listening.